What do you think is common in this composition?
You can't be right, yeah. I do the same thing I told you that I never would.
This one. And oddly enough, in this one. The thing is, it's all music from faraway and exotic Australia, a land of diverse cultures with a rich musical heritage spanning centuries. From ancient Aboriginal instruments to modern sounds, the history of music in Australia is a testament to the cultural richness and creative spirit of the nation. So, what is interesting about Australian music? Why is Australia participating in Eurovision, although it's not a European country? And what popular performers from this continent can you add to your playlist? This is the Melomania channel. Join us by clicking on the subscription button and ring the bell so you won't miss the next videos. And let's embark on a melodic journey through the fascinating history of Australian music. Let's begin our journey through Australia back in time, when the continent was inhabited only by Indigenous peoples. Music played a central role in their culture, serving as a means of storytelling, spiritual connection, and community cohesion. Indigenous music includes the music of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The music of the Australian First Nations people, who settled the continents tens of thousands of years ago, is part of their social and everyday life. Aboriginal dances have been both cult and everyday in nature and played a dominant role in the development of song creativity. Songs of Indigenous Australians consisted of short melodies, the range of which rarely exceeded a few notes. Although in Central Australia there have also been longer melodies that include notes of the entire octave. The rhythm of the songs, as a rule, was associated with the dances that they accompanied and had similarities with the jumps of kangaroos and the movements of other animals that were the object of hunting. As musical instruments, the Aboriginal people used whatever they could find. For example, a board on a rope that makes a noise when rotated, this leaf that is raised to the lip and blown through, or gum leaf, stones, clapsticks or boomerangs, animal skins stretched between the knees or on a wooden bass resonator. And to amplify the sound of the voice, people used didgeridoo, a pipe made of bamboo or a hollow piece of wood. Some of these instruments were used to create the first songs, such as Manikay. Manikay are clan songs that often tell about family history or other historical or mythological events of the area, social relationships, and love. Manikay have survived the centuries and are still popular today, often updated to reflect new trends in film and music. Also unique are songlines, also known as dream lines. They've been used in traditional song cycles, stories, dances, and arts, and were often the basis of ceremonies. Some of them tell of ancestors and epic journeys into the distant past. After the European colonization of Australia in the 18th century, all this folk art did not disappear. The early settlers, interested in the traditions and music of the Indigenous peoples, wrote down some of the traditional songs of the Aboriginal people. The earliest transcription of such music was made by Edward Jones in London in 1793 and published in Musical Curiosities in 1811. Aboriginal music is unique in that it dates back over 60,000 years to the prehistory of Australia, and modern performers continue to perform ancient songs. Of course, after the arrival of Europeans to the continent, many Australian musicians and performers began to adopt and interpret many Western musical styles. However, they managed to preserve and carry a piece of their heritage into the present day. Jimmy Little is considered the first Aboriginal artist to achieve success with his 1964 debut song, The Royal Telephone. In 2005, the University of Sydney even awarded Little an honorary doctorate in music. However, his work was not very popular among his countrymen.
Is a royal service built for one and all.
Both Yathu Yindi were more fortunate and managed to make Indigenous music mainstream. Their 1991 song Treaty from the album Tribal Voice, which combined modern rhythms with century-old traditions, became a real hit. Even now, famous Indigenous Australian artists don't lose their relevance and perform in many musical styles such as rock and roll, country, rap, hip-hop, and reggae. In 2024, Indigenous Australian artists achieved incredible success at home and abroad. Among the leaders of the charts, such as the Kid Laroi and Thelma Plume, which we will talk about later. And in 2022, 10 songs from the Australian chart Triple J Hottest 100 were performed by representatives of the Indigenous population, which set a new record. The First Nations people lived freely until the European settlement of Australia began in the 1800s, and it began with the transportation of convicts from Great Britain. On the way to the new land, these people sang shanty songs. These songs were used on ships to synchronize work and were therefore quite rhythmic. Arriving in Australia, the convicts, under the influence of local traditions, reworked songs they already knew from their homeland, as well as shanty songs, and adapted them to new conditions. The themes of such folk art were government tyranny, as well as difficulty of everyday life on the new continent. The most prominent songwriter of this era was Frank McNamara, better known as Frank the Poet, the author of such songs as Bold Jack Donahue, which grew into one of Australia's most famous compositions, The Wild Colonial Boy.
He robbed the rich, he helped the poor, he shot James Clyde.
With the gold rush of the mid-19th century, a new wave of immigration flooded the continent with Europeans, bringing with them a mix of cultures and musical styles. As in the days of the convicts, most folk songs were created by adding new words to well-known traditional or popular compositions. So-called bush ballads emerged, which, despite their name, have nothing to do with the former US president. Instead, they were folk songs whose creators were mainly representatives of various nomadic professions, like cowboys, shepherds, and shearers, as well as wandering thieves. Because of such performers' lifestyle, the themes of the songs were obviously relevant. Droughts and floods, Aboriginal people and railways, as well as the isolation and loneliness of life in the Australian prairies. The signature song of this musical movement, which conveyed the spirit of the era and became an eternal symbol of Australian identity, was the composition Waltzing Matilda. This song, by the way, is considered the unofficial national anthem of Australia.
Waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing.
By the early 20th century, Australian folk music had become firmly established as a distinct genre, combining influences from Indigenous, Celtic, and Anglo-Celtic traditions. Folk music pioneers such as A.L. Lloyd, the Bushwhackers, and the Seekers helped popularize Australian folk music at home and abroad. European influences were also present. In the 1910s, variety theater became popular, featuring singing, comedy, dancing, animal performances, and magicians. Musical sketches such as The French Conductor, Fun in the Kitchen, and The Australian Gold Diggers were very popular. However, technological developments in the early 1920s, particularly invention of the radio, changed the demand for live performances and reduced local music production. Despite this, folk festivals and round dances became popular social events, providing a platform for new artists to showcase their talents. Along with folk music, classical music developed simultaneously, which later became a kind of calling card of Australia. Even today, every state in the country has orchestras and many large venues where classical works are performed. Isaac Nathan's 1847 Don John of Austria was the first opera written, composed, and performed in Australia. However, the establishment of choral societies circa 1850 and symphony orchestras circa 1890 also led to an increase in compositional activity. Classical music was not far removed from folk music. Indeed, some classical works of the first half of the 20th century were strongly influenced by it. Percy Grainger's English Country Gardens, 1908, is a prime example of this. Most Australian classical composers of this period worked entirely on European models, and many studied composition in Europe or the United Kingdom. But opportunities for Australian composers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries were limited by demographics, economics, and changing musical standards. For example, Arthur Benjamin, who settled in Britain and later Canada, spent part of the First World War in captivity, and the promising composer Frederick Septimus Kelly was killed altogether. However, some were able to develop classical music in Australia. Alfred Hill, for example, composed music for the Federation celebrations in 1901 and in 1912 with Fritz Hart. He founded the Australian Opera League to perform works such as A Moorish Maid or Queen of the Riffs. In the same year, Melbourne composer George Marshall Hall produced his opera Stella. Hill was also involved in the founding of the NSW Conservatorium. During the war and post-war periods, as Australian national identity continued to form, composers sought inspiration from their surroundings and experimented. For example, Australian composer and pianist Elsie Hamilton pioneered simple intonation, creating and lecturing on ancient Greek tuning methods and microtonality as early as 1916. In the 1920s, Henry Tate wrote music based on local bird songs and Indigenous music and advocated the exploration of musical forms native to Australia. In the following years, composers continued to incorporate various elements into their work, ranging from Aboriginal and Southeast Asian music and instruments, American jazz and blues, and ending with European atonality and the avant-garde. A new era in classical music began with the establishment of the Australian Broadcasting Commission and later the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in the 1930s. The ABC launched composers' competitions that brought fame to many talents such as Clive Douglas and Miriam Hyde. Chamber music also flourished in the post-war years, thanks to the establishment of the national organization Musica Viva Australia in 1945. It provided a significant stimulus for public interest in chamber music, organizing annual concerts by leading international and Australian ensembles. And today, classical music on the continent continues to flourish through festivals and competitions. It's also worth mentioning the symbol of Sydney, the Opera House, which took 14 years of creation and was built in 1973. It is one of the most famous and easily recognizable buildings in the world, and its sail-shaped roof makes this building unlike any other. The Opera House is recognized as one of the most famous examples of modern architecture in the world, which constantly holds dance and theater festivals, concerts of various performers, and literary readings. But Australian theatres are not limited to Sydney's calling card, and every major city in the country has its own unique facilities for holding concerts and performances. Music increasingly reflected Australia's cultural and geographical realities, including the relationship between settler society and Indigenous peoples, and a new sense of Australia's place in the Asia-Pacific region. Composers explored the sound worlds of Japan, Bali, and other neighbors, and rethought their connection to European music. And alongside the reinterpretation of the classical, new contemporary genres began emerging in Australia. In the 1950s and 60s, like the rest of the world, Australia experienced its own rock and roll revolution, sparked by the emergence of iconic bands like the Easybeats, AC/DC, and the Bee Gees, which we'll talk about in more detail below. Our first artists, the Bee Gees, were a musical group formed in 1958 by three brothers, Barry, Robin, and Maurice Gibb. The trio was particularly successful in the late 1960s and 1970s, but did not leave the charts until the late 1990s. Before moving to Australia, Barry, Robin, and Maurice were born and spent their early years on a small island, the Isle of Man, which belonged to the British Empire but had its own flag and parliament. The family lived in poverty. Quote, "We were that family in the middle of the night with the suitcases," Barry said. The brothers were musically gifted from childhood and loved to find places with good acoustics to practice singing in harmony. Their favorite place was Lewis's department store in Manchester, England, particularly its restrooms. The trio got their name from a strange coincidence. The boys started singing at a Brisbane motor track owned by Bill Good, who thought that 12-year-old Barry and his younger brothers had talent. Good brought his friend, radio DJ Bill Gates, to listen to Barry. Delighted by what they heard, the men suggested calling the group the Bee Gees, their combined initials and Barry's initials B and G. Later, the band's name was spelled Bee Gees and was modernized to the Brothers Gibb. It's worth noting that the Bee Gees are more of a British band than an Australian one, as they came to Australia in 1958 and returned to England in 1967. Australia was the venue for their first steps, and for the country, the band became another bright event in the world of music. Therefore, we'll not dwell on them, except to remind you that the Bee Gees' mega hit Stayin' Alive is even used to save human lives.
staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive.
The Easybeats are an Australian rock band that was formed in Sydney in late 1964. They were founded in Villawood Migrant Hostel by 5 immigrants, 2 Dutch, 2 English, and 1 Scot. By the way, the band's guitarist, George Young, was the brother of Angus and Malcolm Young from AC/DC, who we'll also talk about. Unlike most other local bands of the time, the Easybeats wrote and recorded exclusively original material, and their neat, matching costumes and fiery songs quickly made an impression at Sydney's hottest clubs. Within 2 years of their formation, the Easybeats became Australia's top band, recording a bunch of exceptional hits and touring with huge success. Their biggest hit, 1966's Friday on My Mind, is considered the first Australian rock song to achieve international success.
She looks fine tonight. She's outside to me.
The Easybeats were as popular as the Beatles, and the wild hysteria of teenage girls at their concerts even got its own name, Easy Fever, and greatly angered local authorities. Over a 6-year period, the band recorded 15 top 40 hits in Australia, including She's So Fine and Women, Make You Feel Alright, as well as other number 1 hits including Friday on My Mind and Sorry. However, in 1969, the band broke up, never giving a reason. The Easybeats' iconic status was even immortalized by the 2017 Australian miniseries Friday on My Mind. It chronicled the band's history from its creation to its breakup. A third and equally important Australian rock band at the time was AC/DC, who formed in Sydney in 1973. Their music has been variously described as hard rock, blues rock, and heavy metal, although the band simply calls it rock and roll. They're credited with influencing the formation of the new wave of British heavy metal bands. Brothers and founders Malcolm and Angus Young got the name AC/DC when their sister Margaret pointed out a symbol on the adapter of her sewing machine. AC/DC is an abbreviation for alternating direct current, meaning that the device can use both types of power. It's also interesting that while in most countries of the world, AC/DC is pronounced ACDC, in their native Australia, they're called Akadaka. Their music became so popular that they were even sued over one of their songs. The thing is that the song Dirty Deed has the lyrics 36, 24, 26, hey, where the last hey was pronounced as 8.
Just ring 362436. Hey, I need a light.
There turned out to be 7 numbers, which made fans think it was a phone number. Of course, everyone started calling it. The couple from Libertyville, Illinois, who owned the number, sued the band and their record label over the hundreds of calls a day. They sought $250,000 in damages and also demanded that the song be re-recorded without the numbers. However, the judge in the case ruled that the accidental use of someone else's phone number was protected by the First Amendment, and the couple received no compensation. Interestingly, not only humans love listening to AC/DC, but sharks too. One Australian tour operator reported that playing hits like Shook Me All Night Long and Back in Black underwater attracts sharks to the boat. He said he tried playing other bands, but with no similar results. Apparently, the toothy ocean dwellers are fans of AC/DC. Australian rock music, with its incredible energy and rebellious spirit, captured the imagination of a generation and launched local artists onto the world stage. And the advent of television music programs such as Countdown provided a platform for Australian musicians to reach a national audience and cemented the country's reputation as a hotbed of musical talent. The 1970s and early 1980s also saw the rise of pub rock, with many Australian rock bands becoming popular at home and abroad. Australian bands such as INXS and Men at Work were prominent representatives of this genre. Incidentally, the latter's hit Down Under was at number 1 on the Billboard charts for 4 weeks in 1983. In 1983, Men at Work won the Grammy Award for Best New Artist, and in 1994, they were inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame, having sold over 30 million albums worldwide. Incidentally, ARIA is one of Australia's largest music awards, recognizing musicians who have made history with their songs.
Come from a land down under. Our women glow and
As for the other band INXS, like the Bee Gees, they also included 3 brothers: Andrew, keyboard; John, drums; and Tim, guitar, Ferris. However, it was a sextet, so it included 3 more musicians, including vocalist Michael Hutchence. The name INXS came from a combination of the name of the jam brand IXL and the name of the English new wave band XTC, who were touring Australia at the time. Initially, their manager wanted them to play Christian rock, but quickly abandoned this idea. INXS were an exclusively Australian phenomenon until their 3rd album, 1982's Shabu Shuba. The songs The One Thing and Don't Change gave the band their first charting on the Billboard Hot 100. It also became INXS's first album to reach the top 5 in Australia. And the song Need You Tonight, which became INXS's first and only #1 song in America, was created by Andrew Ferris while he was waiting for a taxi. However, the taxi driver then had to wait 40 minutes while the musician made a demo. The result of such spontaneous work exceeded all expectations.
I've got to let you know you are my kind.
By the way, does this riff remind you of anything? Maybe some modern popular song? Write your guesses in the comments, and we'll continue. When the band's lead singer took his own life in a hotel room in 1997, the band tried to continue performing with other soloists, but in November 2012, during the final concert of a tour supporting American pop rockers Matchbox 20, INXS announced their breakup after 35 years. The fate of another band, Crowded House, turned out a little differently. Its founders were New Zealander Neil Finn and Australians Paul Hester and Nick Seymour. By the way, it was Nick who created the covers for all their albums. Initially, the musicians called themselves the Mullanes, after Neil's middle name, Mullane, but the name Crowded House was invented while recording their first album in Los Angeles, where they lived together in a tiny crowded bungalow. Their stronghold is Australia and New Zealand, but Crowded House has fans all over the world. They're more popular in Europe and Canada than in America, where their only big hits are Don't Dream It's Over and Something So Strong. Hester left the band a month before the end of the Together Alone tour in 1994. 2 years later, after the release of the Greatest Hits collection, Recurring Dream, Neil Finn announced the band's breakup. In November 1996, their Farewell to the World concert at the Sydney Opera House attracted an estimated 100,000 people. However, to their fans' delight, the band reunited in 2006 and have been performing and writing music occasionally ever since. Rock and roll certainly played a huge role in post-war Australia, but it wasn't the only genre that was popular at the time. Soul and R&B also had a significant impact on Australian music, although it's worth noting that many seminal recordings in the genre by American artists from the latter half of the 20th century were not played on the radio. Racism is said to have been the culprit, ironically. In his book on the history of Australian radio, author and broadcaster Wayne Mack recounts that when a local DJ in Melbourne in the 1960s played Ike and Tina Turner's new single River Deep Mountain High, it was immediately removed from the playlist by the station's programming manager for being, quote, too loud and too black. Despite this, jazz, soul, and R&B continued to flourish. A notable example is Renee Geyer, an Australian singer who rose to fame in the mid-1970s. She had commercial success as a solo artist in Australia with the song It's a Man's World. Geyer's iconic status in the Australian music industry was recognized when she was inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame on July 14, 2005.
This is a man's world, but it would be nothing.
Along Geyer's success, American-born vocalist Marcia Hines became one of Australia's most successful solo singers. Marcia first rose to fame in the early 1970s with critically acclaimed roles in local plays Hair and Jesus Christ Superstar, where she was the first black woman to play Mary Magdalene, before embarking on a solo career. By the late 1970s, she was one of Australia's top singing stars, winning several Queen of Pop awards and hosting her own national variety series. But the most listened to music on the mainland in the 80s and 90s was still pop music, and its brightest representative was, of course, Kylie Minogue, often called the Princess of Pop. She gained recognition in both the music industry and the fashion world as a major style icon. Her accolades include 2 Grammy Awards, 4 4 Brit Awards, and 18 ARIA Music Awards. Minogue is the best-selling Australian artist of all time, with sales exceeding 80 million records worldwide. And in 2024, Time even named her one of the most influential people in the world. Another bright pop star was Natalie Imbruglia. The singer and actress became widely known in the early 1990s, playing Beth Brennan in the TV series Neighbours. After that, she moved to the UK and began her singing career. Her debut single, a cover of Edna Swap's song Torn in 1997, quickly became a global hit, topped the US Billboard Radio Songs chart for 11 weeks, and was included in the list of the 50 best songs of the 1990s, according to Rolling Stone. Imbruglia's debut album, Left of the Middle, went platinum in the US, UK, and Australia, eventually selling 7 million copies worldwide. However, subsequent albums were not commercially successful. In total, the singer released 6 studio albums, received dozens of awards, and was nominated for 3 Grammy Awards. Another popular band in the 1990s was Savage Garden. The pop duo, consisting of Darren Hayes on vocals and Daniel Jones on guitar, keyboards, and vocals, achieved international success with their #1 hits I Want You, To the Moon and Back, Truly, Madly, Deeply, and I Knew I Loved You. The band's 2 studio albums, 1997's Savage Garden and 1999's Affirmation, reached #1 in Australia and Sweden, charted in the top 10 in the United Kingdom and the United States, and sold 23 million copies worldwide. In 1997, the band won a record 10 ARIA Music Awards for their debut album and accompanying singles. They disbanded in late 2001, with Hayes continuing as a solo artist and Jones moving into music production, before retiring from showbiz altogether to become a real estate agent. But with the expansion of the alternative music genre in the 1990s, music festivals also gained popularity. Led by Nirvana, the Big Day Out Festival began in Sydney in 1992, expanding to Melbourne, Perth, and Adelaide in 1993, and Auckland and the Gold Coast in 1994. The Australian rock festival Homebake was launched in 1996, and festivals such as Splendour in the Grass, Beyond the Valley, Falls Festival, and Laneway Festival continue to be a staple of the Australian music calendar today. But festivals weren't the only way to find new talent in the country. In 1995, Australian youth radio station Triple J launched a regional talent competition for unknown musicians and bands. The success of this competition was so great that in 2006 they created a website with the same name, Unearthed, where unknown artists could post their music freely for listeners. As of 2023, the platform contained over 170,000 tracks from over 85,000 independent musicians. The website's success led to the launch of a dedicated digital radio station in 2011, which played only Australian music uploaded to the platform. The Unearthed brand has been described as a revolutionary idea that, quote, arguably changed the entire Australian music landscape. It is responsible for discovering some of Australia's most famous musical artists, including Flume, Missy Higgins, Vance Joy, Gang of Youths, and Grinspoon, who we'll cover in the final section. In the early 2000s, musical talent shows appeared on television, such as Pop Stars in 2000, Australian Idol in 2003, The X Factor in 2005, and The Voice in 2012. But perhaps the most beloved competition for Australians remains Eurovision. Interestingly, Australia is the only non-European country to have participated in the song contest since 2015. It all started back in 1983 when the Eurovision Song Contest was first shown to Australians on television. The contest attracted a large audience. However, early broadcasts in the country either did not include commentary, or the commentary was borrowed from the BBC. From 2010 to 2014, SBS allowed Australian viewers to cast their own televised vote for the final. However, these votes did not count towards the contest itself and had no influence on the overall result. The SBS commentary team and the Australian delegation were given their own commentary booth at the 2012 contest in Baku. They've been given one every year since. Australia's first appearance on the international broadcast of the Eurovision Song Contest took place on the 14th of May 2013 during the first semi-final in Malmö, Sweden. A short pre-recorded video titled Greetings from Australia was broadcast during the interval. The presentation marked the 30th anniversary of the Eurovision Song Contest being broadcast in Australia, and was preceded the week before the local documentary The Heart of Eurovision. In 2014, Australia was even given a performance during the interval of the second semi-final of the contest. Jessica Mauboy was chosen to represent Australia, performing her song Sea of Flags. 4 years later, Mauboy took part in the contest itself, finishing in 20th place. Australia's entry in the 2015 contest was originally intended to be a one-off, with the plan to only perform again the following year if they won. But in November 2015, it was confirmed that Australia would participate in the 2016 contest, and the country has participated in Eurovision every year since then. Australia has only made the top 10 5 times in its history, with its best finish being second place with Tame Impala's Sound of Silence in 2016. Guy Sebastian's Tonight Again finished 5th in 2015. The contest still attracts a significant audience and has a large and active national fan base. Due to the time difference with other European cities, the event is usually broadcast at 5 a.m., which does not stop dedicated Eurovision fans from actively voting for their favorite participants and commenting on the performances. Before we move on to the most interesting part of our video and fill your playlist with quality music from Australian artists, we can't pass by another popular genre in this country: children's music. For over 30 years, the most prominent representative of this genre has been the band The Wiggles. Formed by students at Macquarie University, where they were studying to become early childhood educators, the band released an album of children's music in 1991 based on early childhood education concepts. They began touring to promote the album and were so successful that they left their teaching jobs to devote themselves fully to their creative work. They initially toured with a small group of dancers, which later grew into a larger troupe. Their peak of popularity came in the early 2000s after they broke into the American market. They were listed as the highest paid Australian entertainers by Business Review Weekly for 4 consecutive years, earning 45 million Australian dollars in 2009. The Wiggles became a favorite with children, and their music's been played in preschools around the world. They sold 23 million DVDs and 7 million CDs and performed to an average of 1 million people a year. The band received numerous music awards from the Australasian Performing Arts Association and the Australian Recording Industry Association and were conducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame.
Potato, potato. Cold spaghetti, cold spaghetti, cold spaghetti, cold spaghetti, cold spaghetti.
Well, now, as we promised, we're going to the modern music industry of Australia. But before that, check your subscription. Click on the bell button so you don't miss new videos about other countries and their musical history, and don't forget to like this one. Ready? Then let's move on. Australia is a musically diverse country, with representatives in almost every genre that's popular today, and they have a lot to boast about. To make it easier for you to explore Australia's current music scene, we've put together a comprehensive guide to the country's chart-topping artists that you should add to your playlists. We'll start, of course, with pop artists, because we can bet that you'll probably recognize these names. The most prominent representative of the pop scene is undoubtedly Sia, a singer-songwriter born and raised in South Australia. Rolling Stone considers her one of the greatest Australian musicians of all time, and it's no wonder, as her accolades include nearly a dozen ARIA Awards, 9 Grammy nominations, and an MTV Video Music Award. Sia's famous blonde wig, which hid most of the singer's face, allowed her voice to gain popularity while keeping the star's identity a secret. Of course, you've heard and seen her videos many times, but you probably didn't know about her Australian origin. By the way, Sia's music video for the song Chandelier has the most views among Australian artists, over 2.8 billion. The next, no less bright star is Toni Watson, better known as Tones and I, and her viral track Dance Monkey. Toni began her musical career on the streets of the Australian city of Byron Bay, where she was soon discovered by her current manager. The singer quickly gained popularity when Dance Monkey topped the charts in 30 countries. It became her biggest success and the biggest curse, after which the singer had to deal with hate for her unusual voice timbre and non-canonical appearance for a long time. Toni still writes songs and tours and sometimes performs for free on the streets of Australia.
And I always knew I couldn't stay, so I had a dream that I'd just fly.
Meanwhile, Charlton Howard, aka the Kid Laroi, rose to international fame with his hit single Stay, featuring Justin Bieber. The Sydney-born artist can now be found touring the world. The 21-year-old has also collaborated with artists such as Miley Cyrus and Charlie Puth. No less popular is the Australian pop rock band from Sydney, 5 Seconds of Summer, or 5SOS, formed in late 2011. They're often called the Australian version of One Direction. Before forming the band, the boys posted videos of themselves performing popular songs on their YouTube channel. Their success on this platform caught the attention of Sony, which signed the guys in 2012. Their first single, Out of My Limit, was released in November 2012 and received over 100,000 views on YouTube within the first 24 hours of its release.
It's been 2 years now, haven't even seen the best of me.
5 Seconds of Summer toured with One Direction in the UK, USA, Australia, and New Zealand. By the way, once during the tour, Harry Styles played a prank on the guys by running into their room, throwing a fruit at them and overturning tables, while he was completely naked. The band's guitarist, Michael Clifford, later joked that this experience was traumatic, but this did not break the musicians, and the band became mega successful. All singles from 5SOS's 4 studio albums have charted in many countries, and the band has received numerous accolades and awards, including the prestigious APRA Award for Outstanding International Achievement in 2019. Another popular artist is the 37-year-old Australian Dean Lewis. The singer is best known for his 2016 single Waves, which went 7 times platinum in Australia and was featured in a number of American TV shows, including Suits, Grey's Anatomy, Valor, Riverdale, All-American, Shadowhunters, The Mortal Instruments, and Magnum P.I. His other 2018 single, Be Alright, reached number 1 in Australia and went multi-platinum worldwide, including double platinum in the US. Lewis is still going strong and continues to surprise with new hits.
I know you love her, but it's over, mate. It doesn't matter, put the phone.
Well, this Australian is not only a singer but also an actor. Troye Sivan first gained popularity as a YouTuber. His channel is in the top 20 most popular channels in Australia. In 2008, Troy began acting in films, playing as young James Howlett in the film X-Men Wolverine. He was invited to this role after casting agents watched a number of his videos. In 2018, people saw the Hollywood film Gone Boy, in which Troy got a supporting role. For the soundtrack to this film, Revelation, Sivan received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Original Song.
It's a rocky road.
His musical career also developed simultaneously. In 2013, Troy's EP, Troy, reached number 5 on the US Billboard 200. The single My reached number 1 on the Billboard Dance Club Songs chart. And for the track Rush, Sivan received his first Grammy Award nominations, one for Best Dance Pop Recording and the other for Best Music Video. In 2014, Sivan was named one of the 25 most influential teenagers in the world by Time magazine.
Oh my, I die every night with you.
And this young artist rose to fame on TikTok by posting covers of hits and becoming one of the most popular Australian stars on the platform. Mia Rodriguez is a pop singer and songwriter who began releasing her own music in 2019. Her unconventional looks in music videos and viral hits have made Rodriguez one of the brightest new stars on the Australian scene.
I love you so much, I wonder how your blood tastes. I love you so much.
Along with the pop scene, rock is also gaining popularity. Fans of heavy rock will enjoy the Australian progressive metal band Carnival, formed in 1998. To date, they've released 3 studio albums, the last of which, Asymmetry, was released in 2013. Another alternative rock band is Gang of Youths, who formed with an evangelical church group in Sydney. Their music is heavily influenced by their relationship with religion, and their unique sound earned the band 4 ARIA Awards in 2017. But the real experimenters in music can be considered the Australian rock band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. KGLW, formed in Melbourne in 2010. They're known for exploring various genres, organizing energetic concerts, and creating a prolific discography. In 2017, the band fulfilled their promise to release 5 studio albums in a year. Quote, "We were messing around with all kinds of different stuff," said lead singer Stu McKenzie. "Fast, heavy stuff, and then chilled out, jazzy ideas that just seemed like they were from a totally different universe to that." Stu added, quote, "Eventually it felt like we had these 4 different ideas to build 4 distinct albums around, and then somehow that ended up becoming 5. The guys worked on in sheer enthusiasm, but by the time their 4th album was released, the musicians starting to feel guilty about forcing their fans to buy so much of their music in 1 year. Subsequent releases have combined heavy metal, synth pop, and progressive rock, and feature lyrics that address environmental themes in a connected fictional universe that fans have dubbed the Gizverse. Since 2019, the band has released several albums per year, with their 26th and most recent album, Flight B741, due in 2024. For fans of psychedelic rock, there's Ocean Alley, an Australian alternative rock band from the north of the mainland. Their musical style can be described as a mix of rock and reggae fusion. The band has released 3 studio albums and 2 EPs independently. Their second album, Chiaroscuro, debuted at number 15 on the ARIA Albums chart. Their 2017 track, The Come Down, peaked at number 48 on the Triple J Hottest 100. If you're a metalcore fan, you might want to check out Parkway Drive, an Australian metalcore band from Byron Bay formed in 2003. Parkway Drive have released 7 studio albums, 1 EP, 2 DVDs, a spin-off album, and even a book called 10 Years of Parkway Drive. The band's last 3 albums, Ire, Reverence, and Darker Still, all reached number 1 on the Australia ARIA charts. Fans of unconventional alternative rock will like Samuel Wellings, better known as Kim Dracula, whose songs have become popular on TikTok. Kim is known for both original work and metal covers of songs that are not usually associated with this genre. It all started in 2020 with a cover of Lady Gaga's Paparazzi, which in a few months gained 6 million views on YouTube, 13 million streams on Spotify, and was used in over 60,000 videos on TikTok. The unrivaled success of the song pushed Kim Dracula to 4th place among Australian TikTok artists of 2020, behind Sia, Iggy Azalea, and Mia Rodriguez. The artist gained even greater popularity thanks to the original song Make Me Famous from the album A Gradual Decline in Morale, released in 2023. But Australia is not only known for rock and pop music. For lovers of hip-hop and R&B, the country also has something to offer. A bright representative of this genre is Amethyst Amelia Kelly, better known to the world as Iggy Azalea, an Australian rapper, songwriter, model, and businesswoman. Born in Sydney, Azalea moved to the United States at the age of 16 to pursue a musical career. Azalea received public recognition after posting videos on YouTube for the songs Pussy and 2 Times. Shortly after the release of these 2 songs, she released her debut mixtape Ignorant Art in 2011 and later signed a contract with the Grand Hustle label of American rapper T.I. 3 years later, Azalea's debut studio album, The New Classic, reached the top 5 on several international charts and eventually topped the Billboard Top R&B/Hip-Hop albums, making Azalea the first non-American female rapper to reach the top of the chart. The New Classic was preceded by Azalea's debut single, Work, and the single Fancy, featuring Charlie XCX, which topped the charts and entered the US Billboard Hot 100, and was nominated for a Grammy Award. Azalea also collaborated with Ariana Grande on the 2014 single, Problem, which peaked at number 2 behind Fancy. With these hits, Azalea became the second artist since the Beatles to reach the top and second positions on the Hot 100 with their debut releases on the chart. Additionally, she received 3 top 10 hits on the Hot 100 simultaneously with the aforementioned songs on the album's 5th single, Black Widow, featuring Rita Ora, which debuted later that year. Chase Atlantic is an Australian R&B band and production trio from Cairns, Queensland, formed in 2014. The group consists of 3 members, Christian Anthony, and brothers Mitchell and Clinton Cave. According to the band, their style, quote, conjured up dark alternative pop punctuated by rock and R&B. Over the 4 years of making music, their musical style has evolved from an alternative pop sound to a more alternative R&B sound. Chase Atlantic have released 7 EPs and 4 albums. If you like soul and R&B music, then you might like Hiatus Kaiyote. After all, even Questlove and Prince, after getting acquainted with their work, urged their followers on social networks to check out the band's music. Their album Talk Tomahawk became very successful, and after that, the band toured with their songs all over the world. And in 2014, Hiatus Kaiyote was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best R&B Performance for the single Nakamura. By the way, they became the first Australian band to be nominated for a Grammy in the R&B category.
I will follow you into the sunrise under death.
Josiah Ramel, known professionally as Lithe, has only recently become known to the general public, although he began writing songs in 2017. The Australian rapper and producer gained attention thanks to his 2024 single, Fallback, which received 2 remixes, one with Canadian rapper Nav and the other with American rapper Lil TJ. The indie scene in Australia also has some pretty extraordinary representatives. Of course, first of all, we should mention the legendary Tame Impala, a band from Perth that has consistently topped the charts in Australia since its founding in 2007. Their song, The Less I Know The Better, took first place in the Triple J Hottest 100 of the decade. The band had successful collaborations with Dua Lipa, The Weeknd, Justice and Thundercat, as well as work on the soundtracks for the films Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Minions, The Rise of Gru, and even the Oscar-winning Barbie. Spacey Jane, a young 4-piece indie rock band from Western Australia, is considered one of Australia's most popular bands right now. Their coming-of-age themes combined with catchy melodies have made their mark with their debut studio album, Sunlight, reaching number 2 on the ARIA charts in 2020. Their 7X Platinum single, Booster Seat, won ARIA Song of the Year and reached number 2 on the Triple J Hottest 100. The band's songs continue to top the Australian charts. Another prominent representative of this genre is Thelma Plum, a singer, songwriter, and guitarist. She's also an Indigenous Australian. In 2020, her song Better in Black made it onto the Triple J Hottest 100, which, like many of the singer's other songs, explores themes of love and identity. It's a common thing in Australia for siblings to team up in very successful musical collaborations. This is what happened with the duo Angus and Julia Stone, formed in 2006 by brother and sister. Before Julia and Angus were born, their parents also played in a folk duo. The fruitful collaboration resulted in 4 studio albums, and at the ARIA Music Awards in 2010, they received 5 awards out of 9 nominations: Album of the Year, Best Alternative Album, Best Cover, and Producer of the Year for the album Down the Way, and Single of the Year for Big Jet Plane. And although they now have their own separate musical projects, their brother and sister regularly team up to perform at festivals and tour the world. Also of interest is the work of Amy Louise Billings, better known as Amy Shark, who's from the Gold Coast, Queensland. From 2008 to 2012, her early solo material was released and performed under the name Amy Cushway. Who hasn't heard the viral hit Riptide? Well, it belongs to Vance Joy, an Australian singer and songwriter. Before starting his music career, Vance was a promising Australian football player. In 2008 and 2009, he played for the Coburg team in the Victorian Football League and won the award as the best player in his first year of participation. Joy began his musical career in the late 2000s while completing his law degree. He took his stage name from a character in the novel Bliss by Australian author Peter Carey to further separate his personal and professional lives. His real name is James Gabriel Keogh. And if you're into dance and electronic music, you should definitely check out Rufus Du Sol, a trio from Sydney. They're known for their hypnotic electronic music, as well as the powerful emotional voice of lead vocalist Tyrone Lindquist, which sounds even more amazing live. Dominic Matheson, better known by his stage name Dom Dalla, is an Australian house music producer, DJ, songwriter, and remixer. Known for his distinctive style of house music and impressive performances at the Coachella and Lollapalooza festivals. He's been nominated 8 times for the ARIA Award for Best Dance Release, and in 2024, Dom Dalla was even nominated for a Grammy Award for the song New Gold, featuring the Gorillaz, Tame Impala, and Booty Brown.
Cut some shapes, get it right up in my space and shake it. Just shake it.
If you like outrageous characters, then you may check out Empire of the Sun, an Australian electronic music duo formed in 2007 and known for their bright costumes and elaborate sets. The duo is the result of a collaboration between Luke Steele, former member of the alternative rock band The Sleepy Jackson, and Nick Littlemore, member of the electronic band PNAU. The band's 2000 debut album, Walking on a Dream, brought them international success, going double platinum in Australia and gold in the UK. The album charted in a number of international charts, including the title track, which peaked at number 10 on the Australian ARIA singles chart, and We Are the People, which peaked at number 14 on the UK singles chart. We also recommend checking out the tracks of the Australian musician, DJ, and producer who works under the pseudonym Flume. He's considered a pioneer of the future-based genre who helped popularize it. Flume has remixed songs by artists such as Lorde, Sam Smith, Arcade Fire, Hermitude, and Disclosure. His second studio album, Skin, released in 2016, not only topped the ARIA Albums chart, but also won the Best Dance/Electronic Album category at the 2017 Grammy Awards. The album gained international recognition thanks to its lead single, Never Be Like You, which was nominated for Best Dance Track. Even in the mega popular genre like K-pop, there are many Australian representatives. You heard that right. There's a whole so-called Aussie line that is the Australian line. The thing is that Australia has become the new Asian country. In 2021, about 17.4%, or 1 in 6, Australians were Asian, which is 4.6 million out of a population of 25.7 million. This is twice the proportion of Asians in the United States. The rapid growth of the Korean-Australian population occurred after immigration reforms in 1995. The 1901 White Australia policy, which aimed to keep the nation white and make it difficult for Asians to migrate to Australia, ended in 1975. In the 1990s, the economies of Australia and Asia became increasingly intertwined. By 2007, East Asian countries accounted for almost 50% of Australia's total trade in goods and services, more than its trade with North America or Europe. A large-scale Korean migration occurred in the 2000s, and as of 2021, there are 105,560 Koreans living in Australia. As a result, young Australian K-pop stars were children who moved with their parents or were born there in the early 2000s. Perhaps the most famous of these is Rosé from BLACKPINK. The idol group Stray Kids also has 2 Australian members. They are Bangchan and Felix, who grew up in Sydney. Jake from ENHYPHEN is from Brisbane, and Lily, the lead singer of INXS, was born and raised in Victoria with a Korean mother and an Australian father. New Jeans also boasts a significant number of Australian representatives. Hani is a Vietnamese Australian from Melbourne, and Danielle, the child of an Australian father and a Korean mother who spent most of her childhood between the 2 countries. However, observers note that many Australians are reluctant to accept the idea of an Asian future nation and see themselves as a Western European nation. For many Asian Australians who grew up in a society where they were growing in number but they still remain marginalized, K-pop, with its modern, westernized imagery and relatable Korean idols, represented a way to embrace their ethnicity and break down stereotypes of the outsider. It's therefore not surprising that half of K-pop fans in Australia are of Asian descent. Well, as we can see, Australian music today is as diverse and eclectic as the nation itself, spanning a wide range of genres and styles. Australian musicians continue to push the boundaries and captivate audiences around the world, from the indie pop sounds of artists like Tame Impala to the electronic beats of Flume and Rufus Du Sol. Of course, we can't cover the entire Australian scene in one video, so if we miss someone really important and cool, or you just want to recommend someone else to our playlist, be sure to write about it in the comments. With its diverse musical traditions and vibrant talent, Australia continues to make its mark on the global music scene, inspiring audiences and artists alike with its unique sounds and stories. As the journey of Australian music unfolds, one thing remains certain. The enduring power of music to unite and inspire lives in the heart and soul of Australia. Thank you for being with us. Like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what country or musical style you'd like to learn about next time. And that's all for today. We hope we told you lots of interesting things, and your playlist has been replenished with new names. You can also check out our other videos about music in Brazil and Italy. And we're not saying goodbye. We'll see you very soon. See you next time. Take care.